Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this 25th of July. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information from the National Weather Service. You can do that very easily by saving this number on your phone, 1-800-472-0391. You know that's the Alaska Weather Information Line. If you keep that on your favorites on your phone, just give it a ring anytime and listen to the numbers as it gives you that information. You can save those numbers as well in your notes. And remember, just hit a couple buttons and your forecast is a few finger touches away. You can always find the weather online as well. Now in the bush, it's probably a little harder to get a really good read on some of these websites, especially the really graphical ones. So we have some ways to get around that. If you haven't checked that out lately, look for the text-only options on there, and it'll save a lot of bandwidth and probably a lot of money if you're downloading this off of satellite. Weather.gov/Alaska. If you want to try something on your mobile device too, even a little bit of service will help you. Mobile.weather.gov, mobile.weather.gov. Simply type in your village name and then save that to your home screen, and that will be a quick and easy way to get a mobile-friendly weather forecast where you are in your part of Alaska. If you can't find what you're looking for, please do let me know. I'm happy to serve you as I'm able. david.snider@noaa.gov is the easiest way to find me. Now, as we're looking out today, I was talking to our friends up at the Fairbanks Forecast Office, and they said, take a look at Estradome, looking west, and sure enough, I did. And this, they say, is a pyrocumulus cloud. So if you're in Fairbanks, looking to the west, probably a little more northwest there, you're looking at a cloud billowing up from one of the most recent fire starts there. I think it's called the Dehne fire. I'm probably just butchering the name, so apologies for that. But this is a pyrocumulus cloud. So it is a bubbling cloud, cumulus, and it is one that is due to convective development. So again, that heat rising makes the cloud. But the pyro part on the front part of that means it is a cloud that has resulted from a wildfire. So this isn't smoke. It is probably got some smoke in it, but this is one that is adding to the cloud cover because it is making those air bubbles rise, condensing the moisture around it, and then forming that cloud. So interesting stuff there. If you want to check out the aviation cameras anytime you want, I encourage you to do so. This is a really great situational awareness tool, whether you're just interested in the clouds around Alaska or if you are about to fly, and most pilots in Alaska already know about this good stuff. avcams.faa.gov, it might redirect you to a little bit better site, but that is the image there from the Estradome looking west this afternoon. Fire danger remains high. In fact, over the last couple days, pretty big different story than what we were dealing with last week. You can see high fire danger stretching into the middle Yukon Valley, through the Tanana River Valley, all the way from the upper end there through Fairbanks and into the upper Yukon Valley, as well as the Copper River Valley. Even a hint of drier weather across northern parts of southeast. So fire concerns remain high for this late in the season. And that's a good reminder for you to be extra careful with your fire. If you're doing some burning, make sure you're checking on weather conditions before you do that. Check in with your local fire officials and village managers to make sure that it's a good idea to do that where you are. And of course, be extra careful with campfires if you're out there burning anything at fish camp or anywhere else. Here's a look at the satellite picture. The visible satellite picture shows low pressure in the Gulf across the areas south of the Alaska Peninsula. We've got high pressure across the eastern Gulf and high pressure out west. What that does is it puts a lock on the weather pattern here and keeps low pressure right here. That means clouds and rain are moving in from south to north, wave after wave after wave. That means rainfall all across southwest and south central. Still pretty dry weather across southeast, fairly dry across the interior, but we are getting more moisture in here, and with that heat, we're also bubbling up more clouds across the interior on top of the pyrocumulus we saw. We're still getting the shower and thunderstorm possibilities each day, one of which started the wildfire we were just looking at. So that's a concern. Colder air is dropping in from the north. That is a big difference from the weather you had up there yesterday, where temperatures were in the 70s and pushing the 80s again. So temps in the 40s this afternoon, a huge change for the North Slope. There's the leading edge of that cooler weather right now. It's sitting across the Brooks Range on the south side. We have rainfall. Showers and thunderstorms have been forming across the interior. A lot of that activity so far today has been up across the northern Yukon. Here's low pressure across the western Gulf. This is just going to sit and regenerate on itself. It might wobble a little bit west or south, but overall it's going to stay in this general vicinity. High pressure sitting across the eastern Gulf, 1,030 millibars. It doesn't want to move. High pressure is also sitting across the Bering, anywhere from about 1,025 to 1,021 millibars. It's keeping low stratus and fog in the region, and that's going to be a problem for St. Paul in the next couple days. Your visibility for flying weather is going to be pretty poor. As we get into tonight, watch for periods of rainfall across the northern Gulf, southwest, all the way down toward the Alaska Peninsula. Again, more waves of rain will be working through as we get into the weekend. Some of this rain is going to push into northern parts of southeast, so Haines, Skagway, up toward Yakutat, maybe Gustavus, maybe Juneau. South of that, conditions look to be fairly dry. You'll also have some choppy weather out here across the outer coast, maybe some small craft advisories for you folks going out to fish. Across the interior, we're going to see smoke moving around because of the wildfires there. And the front up north doesn't look like it's going to move. In fact, it should be locked on target there for most of the Brooks Range. Out west, an unsettled pattern, rain and drizzle there. That doesn't change very much. Again, with a ridge of high pressure sitting out across the western Bering, we don't expect to see a whole lot of movement in really any of the sensible weather that we have in the region right now. So as we get into Thursday, low pressure sitting across places like Sand Point and just to the west, Cold Bay, False Pass, 1014 millibar low. It's nothing really big to get excited about, except it's a moisture pump, and it keeps grabbing onto the rainfall and moving that into the Chugach and the higher train off of some of the very warm and wet air across and over the Pacific Ocean. Showers and rainfall will continue here. Southeast generally dry but cloudy, it looks like, on Thursday, and showers and thunderstorms will form across some parts of the middle Yukon Valley up toward the Kobuk and Noatak valleys and the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. By Friday, really more of the same, although we're going to have two areas of convection, it looks like, the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range and the upper Yukon, and then a little bit further south, maybe as far south as the Talkeetnas and the central and eastern Alaska range there. So areas around the Fairbanks region might catch a little bit of a break, but you'll probably see the clouds bubbling up. Low pressure to the south of Kodiak Island. It'll keep the rain going. It looks like a wet day again for Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, and areas out toward Lake Iliamna and the southwestern Capes all the way through the YK Delta. But if you're in southeast, you might catch a little bit of a break. If high pressure moves just a little bit to the west, you'll see clouds out to your west, but you might see plenty of sunshine over your backyard. So hopefully you'll get another day of some really nice summer weather before you wrap up the week. Out to the west, periods of westerly winds coming in behind that low pressure system. Again, not terribly strong, but enough to keep low clouds, stratus, and light rain in the region. Let's talk temperatures. As we get into the overnight hours, expect lows in the mid to upper 50s for parts of southeast. A little bit cooler for south central, Prince William Sound, Kodiak Island. Not cold. The wet weather will help us to keep clouds in place, of course, and that'll keep temperatures moderate. Look for overnight lows in the interior, back in the mid to upper 50s. Low 60s in some places like Fort Yukon, Galena out toward Bethel, just pushing that 60-degree mark. Closer to 50 in Nome, Shishmaref, and out toward Kotzebue. Upper 30s and lower 40s for the North Slope, the Alaska Peninsula closer to 50, St. Paul about 46, Macquarie 51, and St. Lawrence Island around Gamble and Savunga in the mid-40s. A high temperature, it doesn't change much from that for you tomorrow on St. Lawrence Island, but in the interior, warming up quickly, upper 70s to mid-80s for Fort Yukon and Eagle. Northway close behind, South Central closing in on 70 degrees. Temps in Prince William Sound, upper 50s to lower 60s. Of course, this is counting on not a whole lot of rainfall. It won't be that warm if it's raining. Upper 60s and lower 70s for many in southeast. Ketchikan and Annette could push the mid-70s with sunshine there. 40s and 50s for the North Slope. Southwest, you're looking at temps in the mid to upper 50s, maybe a few 60s there. Overnight lows, pretty much the same stuff. 30s and 40s up north, southwest in the low 50s, south central in the mid-50s, a few 40s there around Prince William Sound, and southeast mid-50s to about 60 degrees down south. For Friday, not quite as warm for the interior, 40s and 50s for the north, southwest, pushing the 60-degree mark. Kodiak Island 57 and 60s and 70s in southeast for Friday.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On the aviation weather now, notice that we're going to see fairly widespread IFR conditions from Prince William Sound into northern and southern parts of southeast to start your Thursday morning. Also, most of the North Slope will be dealing with at least some MVFR and likely IFR from Utqiagvik and Barrow down toward Wainwright and eastward all the way out toward Kaktovik. Most of the interior will be VFR to start. However, many of your Alaska Range passes from about Rainy Pass, just west of Windy Pass really, down to Rainy Pass, all the way through just east of Lake Iliamna through the Alaska Peninsula, and many parts of the southwestern Capes will be dealing with IFR. As we get into the afternoon, that doesn't really change very much. We start to see convection firing up across the Yukon Valley and the upper Koyukuk and into the Noatak Valley, and then also across the eastern Brooks Range. Notice some improvements across parts of southeast around Skagway Haines out toward Gustavus and northward toward Yakutat, all the way around to Resurrection Bay, the Barren Islands, and Kodiak Island. We're still going to be looking at IFR conditions with MVFR hit and miss across south central, the Copper River Basin. Some improvement across the Alaska Range passes. The Western Cape still flirting with MVFR and maybe even IFR at times, and most of the chain and the peninsula still looking at IFR conditions. Same goes for St. Paul and St. George for your flying Thursday. For Friday morning, watch for VFR again for most of the interior, the west, and many parts of the North Slope, but IFR conditions are expected from Utqiagvik all the way out toward Kaktovik once again. The North and Eastern Gulf, fairly widespread IFR, no big change there. Southeast still dealing with at least MVFR for about a half of southeast. The northern area is more likely to see IFR conditions. Some of that could be over Juneau as well. The western coast, IFR conditions through St. Paul, St. George, and through most of the chain, and the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island for the morning. For the afternoon, very little change along any of the coasts there. You may see some holes developing around Bristol Bay, with MVFR still lingering from Lake Iliamna out toward the YK Delta into parts of Norton Sound, Nome, and the interior of the Seward Peninsula. Hit and miss convection across the central and eastern Brooks Range and some of the Alaska Range a little bit further south, and we'll see it for tomorrow. And then MVFR across some of the North Slope communities as we get into the afternoon for your Friday. Let's take a look at your pass conditions in detail now. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass, both VFR to start. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass tomorrow, Thursday. IFR conditions we expect. Rainy Pass leans over to MVFR conditions during the day. Windy Pass probably starts there. Isabel Pass should see some improvements as we go through Thursday. Toneda Pass, MVFR. VFR in... Oh, that was Mentasta Pass. Toneda Pass looks to be VFR. Portage Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions there. And as we get into Chilkoot and White Pass, expect IFR conditions through most of the day. Now, freezing levels show us that the colder air is centered up right on low pressure, exactly what we would expect on either side. You have warmer air with high pressure to the east and also to the west, and it is going to be this trough of low pressure that's fairly persistent, so don't look for a whole lot of changes in the coming days. Levels across the North Slope only between 8,000 and 10,000 feet, so not terribly low, and that's exactly what we see here across southwest, Bristol Bay, and Kodiak Island, as well as the Alaska Peninsula. Now, icing, we don't really see any significant icing below 10,000 feet. Of course, convection implies the threat for isolated severe areas of convection, but again, we'll have to wait and see where that develops. So keep your eye on the chart, but nothing significant showing up right now. Our low pressure system at the surface is guided by the fast moving river of air we see across southwestern Alaska. There's another low moving across the Kamchatka Peninsula, but generally it's the high pressure to the east and the system to the west that's kind of holding this in place. This is a little more progressive, meaning it wants to kind of nudge this out of the way just a little bit more. Down below at 9,000 feet, here's our low southerly winds guiding in very wet weather and low ceilings and certainly some poor visibility at times across the Gulf and across the Bering, working in with some of the colder air dropping southward. Wind speeds not terribly strong, generally westerly winds across most of the interior until you get up north around the North Slope. Wind speeds there just zinging in around 50 knots or so. At 3,000 feet, you can see the ridge having a little more of an impact here. Southerly flow for the Gulf once again, northwesterlies for southeast. A south wind becoming more westerly as it moves further north into the slope. 10 to 20 knots there, 15 knots a little bit further south over the Alaska Range, and westerlies coming in across the Bering Sea. Wind speeds there strongest out across the central and western chain between about 15 to as much as 50 knots. So what about turbulence? Well, the threat remains fairly isolated and low. The greatest risk right now looks to be out across the western chain where we saw those wind speeds coming up to about 50 knots or so. So generally below 4,000 feet, isolated moderate to considerable moderate, generally west of Kiska, so fairly out there. And out across Bristol Bay, maybe a little bit of chop below 4,000 feet. Watch for isolated severe turbulence in the vicinity of any convection. And you'll also find some bumps there across the North Slope. We'll be back with a look at your marine forecast in just a few minutes.
Hello, I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite orbiting 22,000 miles above Earth. I can see a lot of cool stuff from up here, and I take pictures of it with my spiffy camera that has 16 different settings. I have such good eyesight, I can see clouds, snow, smoke, smog, and ash, so I can warn you about dangerous conditions and help you avoid them. When storms are brewing, I watch them closely and help with hurricane, tornado, and flood warnings to help keep you safe. And my lightning mapper tracks lightning strikes way up in the sky, even through dark, dense clouds. I also help with search and rescue missions. I listen for distress signals from emergency beacons and tell search and rescue teams just where to find people who need help. But even when I'm keeping a close eye on Earth, I'm monitoring weather out here in space, too. I watch the sun for big bursts of energy, which send waves of radiation toward Earth that can affect power grids, block communication with planes, cause errors in GPS, and damage satellites. Space weather is also very dangerous for astronauts working outside the International Space Station. I warn them so they can get inside where they'll be safe. So the next time you watch a weather report or check your phone for the forecast, remember, that's me. So look to the sky and wave. I'll be here. Whoa! Things are looking pretty bad down there. But don't worry. I'm going to give weather forecasters a heads up and help you stay safe. I'm a GOES-R series weather satellite, and one of my jobs is to keep an eye on Earth's weather as I orbit above. But I'm 22,000 miles above Earth. How does your local weather forecaster know what I see all the way up here? First, I have to figure out what's going on. I point my special camera at the Earth and take pictures of the clouds I see below. My pictures show where the clouds are, but I also take lots of other notes about the clouds. For example, how high they reach into the atmosphere, how much rain they might cause, and when a severe storm may be forming. But I can't keep all of this information to myself. I have to share it with weather forecasters down on Earth. A big antenna is waiting for my call. Since I'm a satellite, I send my pictures and notes in a computer language of ones and zeros. Luckily, the antenna speaks my language. Computers connected to the antenna organize my notes and combine all of the pictures and cloud information and translate them into weather maps. They send a version of the maps back up to me. I'll hold on to these for later. Another copy of the maps is split into smaller pieces. This helps the maps move faster from one place to another. The map pieces are then sent for processing before being sent back up in the sky to a communication satellite. From there, the maps are picked up by antennas at the National Weather Service forecast offices in each region. There are more than 100 offices. I also take the maps that I received and send them out to companies that specialize in making the maps more colorful and better for viewing on TVs and computers. The colorful maps and the maps from the forecast offices then go to your local weather forecaster. The forecaster combines the information from these maps with lots of other information, like model forecast data and radar data, to make predictions about the upcoming weather in your area. And that's how I help you find out if bad weather is going to ruin your afternoon plans. You're welcome. Soon it will be my time to shine in outer space. I'm the GOES-R satellite. That stands for Geostationary Operational Environmental Satellite. And the R stands for my order in this series of weather satellites. Like my older siblings before me, I'll do a lot for watching weather, but I'm pretty special because I have a lot of new gadgets. I'm originally from Colorado, but my journey to space has a few stops along the way. I'll be shipped in a very special satellite shipping container to Kennedy Space Center. Moving me around is not easy. I'm over 18 feet wide and weigh 6,000 pounds. And then things get really exciting. I get loaded onto an Atlas V541 launch vehicle. A big rocket! Woo! After Atlas and I blast off together, my compartment separates from the launch vehicle and I continue to climb higher and higher. Then I break away completely and unfurl my solar panel and antenna. After that, I have to use my thrusters to get into just the right position, 22,000 miles above the ground and traveling 1.9 miles per second to keep up with Earth's rotation. And then I can officially start my job along with my fellow GOES sisters, where I take advanced pictures for more accurate weather forecasts, map lightning in real time, and improve the monitoring of the sun's activity. It's going to be so awesome! I can't wait!
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time for a quick check of your marine weather forecast. We'll start with sea surface temperatures across the eastern Gulf. Temps are fairly warm. We'll get out of the way of the scale here, and you'll notice that these levels here in the orange and yellow are pushing that 15 degrees C or higher for many locations, with the exception of some areas in the Inside Passage, but around Ketchikan and north, it's even warmer than that, probably pushing 17 degrees Celsius. In Prince William Sound, fairly warm water there. The cool water in the Cook Inlet region will probably remain cool as we've got a lot of runoff moving through. We've got very warm water going on in the Norton Sound region. Again, that's pushing the 17 degrees C range there, and also the upper end of Kotzebue Sound fairly warm. The dark blue, of course, that's under the ice edge, but you can see a lot of warmer water trying to encroach around the edges of that. So let's take a look at the ice edge, and you'll see as of today, the 25th, a lot of marginal ice there stretching from just east of Wainwright up through Barrow, Utqiagvik, and across the north slope. The main pack ice has been pulled away a little bit, and with more of a westerly flow, we'll probably see a little more concentration of that moving eastward ever so slightly. So anything in the blue shaded area could be 80% or lower in concentration, but the thickness is not shown here. Make sure you check that on weather.gov/Anchorage/ice for your very latest information and updates for the outlook. As far as southeast weather goes, light winds are expected. It's going to be fairly warm the next couple days with small seas on the inside, 2 to 3 foot seas in most areas, 4 foot seas down through the Clarence Strait with a northwesterly wind blowing at 20 knots there, probably the same outside of the Dixon entrance. Otherwise, generally light and somewhat variable flow across the eastern and northern Gulf Coast. As we get into Friday, winds start to come in a little bit more from the west and northwest as low pressure sits a little bit further out to the west, but high pressure is controlling your weather, keeping skies generally dry and conditions fairly warm. 15 to 20 knots on the inside with 3 to 4 foot seas, 7 foot seas from about Craig to the Dixon entrance, 6 foot seas up towards Sitka on Friday. South Central looking for winds out of the east, 15 knots and 2 foot seas in the Gulf. Look for many areas up to about 5 to 6 foot seas there on that 15 to 20 knot wind. Winds around 10 knots for the Cook Inlet region tomorrow. A light onshore flow expected for Thursday with 2 foot seas. Stronger winds over the Barrens by Friday. Southerlies are down to about 15 knots for Cook Inlet. Look for an east and southeasterly flow over the Barrens. 5 foot seas there, 2 foot seas on the inside of Prince William Sound, and southwesterlies across the northern Gulf. Bristol Bay, you're looking at a southeasterly flow, 20 knots, 3 foot seas there. Northerlies behind low pressure across the southern end of the Alaska Peninsula. Look for a 5 to 6 foot sea around Kodiak Island, 3 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait on a 15 knot wind. For Friday, not a lot of change. Low pressure is really the big driver here. It's going to stay off to your west, and that means a south and easterly flow coming over. 15 to 20 knots all areas, 3 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait, 5 foot seas across the northern Gulf coastline, 5 to 6 foot seas there from AKwx westward, and looking at 3 to 4 foot seas across the Bering Sea. For the west coast and the Aleutians, we'll see kind of a mixed bag here. We've got west-northwesterlies across the central and eastern chain as low pressure is trying to hold on, but we also have another low Sitting out to your west, 25 to 30 knots there from Kiska to Attu, 6 to 10 foot seas expected there. For Friday, look for a broad west and southwesterly flow and other waves moving across. That'll stir up the winds a little bit more. You'll have 4 to 5 foot seas across the central and eastern chain, 6 to 7 foot seas across the Pacific coast, and 8 to 9 foot seas out across the west, all on the 15 to 25 knot wind. For the west coast, northwesterlies should be light inside of Norton Sound. That'll keep you mild. Northerlies on the north side of Nunivak Island. Easterlies coming out of the Kuskokwim Delta, also at 20 knots with a 3 foot sea. For Friday, look for southeasterlies around the Pribilofs, 15 knots and 4 foot seas. And a broad east and southeasterly flow moving off the YK Delta. You're looking at 5 to maybe 6 foot seas in the region, 7 foot seas fishing around St. Matthew. Southerlies across the Chukchi coast around 10 to 15 knots should be expected for your Thursday afternoon, 2 to 3 foot seas there, 4 foot seas through the Bering Strait. Westerlies over the ice, 15 to 20 knots, and you'll see a little bit of that reversing course as we get into Friday. Easterly flow, again, all of this behind the front, 10 to 15 knots, feeding into low pressure developing to your west with a southerly flow across the Chukchi, giving us 3 to 4 foot seas on your Friday. Let's take a quick check of the weather once again. Look for smoke in the interior thanks to one of the new wildfire starts there. You can see it west from Esterdome's FAA camera today. Looking up north, we've got a front stalled across the Brooks Range. Watch for showers and maybe some storms there tomorrow. Rain will continue across south central and southwest. Some of that could work its way into the northern parts of southeast around Haines and Skagway. Out west, low decks, low ceilings, and more rain for the parts of the central and western chain and the Pribilofs. Look for thunderstorms across parts of the middle and upper Yukon Valley again for Thursday and Friday, and more rain continues in south central. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. See you tomorrow.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.